Hello, and welcome to Radio OPAC. This is June 5th, and I'm Jessie Glover, and I'm really thrilled to be joined by Edward A Julian Sr. today, a spoken word poet. And I want to welcome everyone out there on Facebook who's watching, as well as any of our audience members who are seeing this inside a correctional institution. Welcome to all of you. So Edward, hello.
Yes. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really glad to be talking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. So we'll just launch in, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I'd love for you to tell me about you. Tell me about what you'd love for me to know about your story. What brings you to being the person you are today?
Well, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. During that time of living there, played basketball and went to school, graduated, but got into the street life and sold drugs and was arrested 3 times. 6 months, 19 months, and served 14 years in the federal system. Actually, I was sentenced to 20 years and was able to get a reduction. But what helped me, propelled me to be the person I am today, just, going through that situation and serving those 14 years and realizing that, I wasn't reaching my full potential. So I knew that I had to make a drastic change. And while in prison, I made that drastic change. I was able to write over 7 books, 300 poems, and a curriculum, and just continue to educate myself and better myself as a person. And once I was released, I continued that. I, go inside the prison to speak, been working for my job for 7.5 years, just doing all the necessary things I need to do to be better as a person, so just putting in the work. And my slogan is begin, believe, become. I really believe you have to believe in yourself. You begin, by making a start somewhere, and you become by putting in the work. So,
wow, that's really inspiring. I love the idea that you just have to begin somewhere.
You got to
and
begin
that
somewhere.
The process of becoming who you're going to be and the process of having the impact you're going to have is something that happens in the doing, right?
Yes, it does.
After you begin. Would you mind just saying a little bit more about the work that you do inside prisons?
Well, actually, I work for MCS Touch. Well, we go inside the prison and we hope, well, we're not going in now because of the pandemic, but we was going inside once a week to 4 different institutions where I facilitate a group for 2 weeks, and we help guys come home with housing, ID, Social Security cards, and employment. They need a ride, we'll pick them up, so we're just trying to reach back and say, hey, because the guy that actually started the agency he's a ex-offender. So we just saying, hey, we know what it's like. We know what you're going through. And, here's some things we can offer. We talk about productive time management, the Robin Hood theory, rob from the rich, give to the poor. And that goes a little deeper because what we usually do is rob from the poor to give to the poor. The majority of us in our situation. So.
Wow. And so part of the work that you're doing is, it sounds like sort of part of your own, you're part of your own story becomes a part of that work, that you have an opportunity to sort of reflect back to people what's possible and where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like I said, my company is Julian Enterprise. My slogan is begin, believe, become.
Yeah.
My book is also begin, believe, become. And, I go around to churches, schools, recreation centers, the prison, and speak my message of overcoming and doing some things that I need to do to change.
Yeah. Wow. So you carry this message around everywhere, and you write, you've written a book, you use poetry as an expressive tool. Would you mind just telling me a little bit more about the role of poetry in your life?
So the role of poetry, I'm from a big family, 10 brothers and sisters. I'm the baby out of 11 kids. So,
wow.
And
wow.
My mom, third grade education, but she worked for 33 years straight. She's been retired for the last 10 years. But she always gave me poetry. And it was one poem that stuck out, and it was "Don't quit when things are rough and the road you're treading seem unhill, and don't quit." I can't recite it off top, but that poem really stuck with me. And she said, no matter what you do, no matter what you get into, don't quit. And I didn't care what I did, whether it was selling drugs, cutting grass, raking leaves, working a job. I gave it my all, and I didn't quit. So I knew that I had to channel the wrong part of me into the right way. And I applied that poem, "Don't quit." So, I just started writing when I got incarcerated. When I was sentenced to the 20 years, and I just wrote in a journal. I started writing, and I noticed that, once I was in the institution, they was like, "Man, your poems are getting better, man. Why don't you do poetry slams? And why don't you host a poetry slam?" So I started hosting poetry slams, and I just kept writing and kept writing. And today I just, I share my poetry and my book as, that voice.
That it's the sort of distillation of your voice. It's you channeling your voice.
Yeah.
Wow. So I love that you described hearing from people that you were getting better at poetry, and that gave you confidence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what for you is I would love to hear a little bit about the even the process of writing, or the process of figuring out what your voice is through the poem. Could you tell us a little bit about your creative process?
So it had to be organic, and once I feel it, I might, or it might come from a slogan I hear. It might come something from I hear in a rap song. It might come from something just watching on TV.
Yeah.
And if once it hit me, I'll just write, and sometimes I'll take a step back and review it, but other times I'll just write it. I write it out, and then I'll go back and fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And I'll maybe go read something on the situation that I'm writing about, or maybe talk to someone to ask them questions, like, to get some more information. Like one of the poems that I would love to share with you guys is Myths and Misconception. And I had to actually ask questions about some of this because, like in the 19th century, I didn't know too much about the 19th century. So I asked some older people, and I read about it to give me more information to make the poem more powerful.
Wow. So it sounds like you create something, and then you layer in all kinds of other impressions and your own responses and
information.
Discoveries. Yeah, that's amazing. So everybody out there on Facebook Live, hello, welcome. So glad that you're here. So glad that you're watching. I'm speaking with Edward A. Julian Sr., and we are just talking about his creative process. I just want to encourage all of you out there to join us on the talkback on Zoom. There's going to be a link in the comments. So please help us continue the conversation with Edward after the live stream ends. Hey, Edward, could I ask you, I want to hear that poem, by the way, Myths and Misconception. But before we go there, I'd love to ask you what your hopes are for the future today.
And I know, we was talking a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Really, my hopes for the future is that, I'm dealing, I've been traumatized, and I've been able to suppress it. But recently, with the events that have been occurring within our nation and society, with these recent deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and the guy that was killed on Facebook, even with the situation with the woman, she was called the police, and she said, "I'm gonna call the police on you to let them know that you," and she went into a panic mode saying that a black guy was attacking her. So all of that happening during a pandemic, my hopes for the future is that we as a nation, white people with the white privilege and black people who know to do better, that we come together, because it's senseless. It's systematic. Racism is we've been discriminated against. It's police brutality. We've been overlooked for jobs and health care, dilapidated housing. It's just so much across the board that everyone, in order to make this change, because and like I was telling you earlier, I don't agree with the rioting. I don't agree with the looting. I don't agree with tearing up business. But this is the aftermath of what's been happening. And if you continue to treat people this way, this is what's going to happen. Now we're saying that they shouldn't do this. Well, let's deal with the root of the problem. Because the only way we can solve a problem, we have to get to the root of the problem. Everything that's going on is because of what's been happening. You know, and you just think, it wasn't nothing that was coordinated or put together. Simultaneously, all 50 states went into panic mode and went into, you know, these protesting. Yeah. So that right there saying that this is wrong, something is wrong, something needs to be done. And it's going to take us all collectively. Yes. You know, you can't say that I got white privilege, but I'm not a racist. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. You got to be active. You got to say something. You got to do something. Just like when this pandemic hit with the COVID-19, commercials started going up. We'll get through this. We're all in together. All these commercials are going up. Hey, let's put these commercials about these Black Lives Matter. Let's put these commercials about this racism. These companies, these 540 companies, these big companies, these supervisors, these CEOs, the people in power, Congress, politicians, we need to run these same commercials on what's going on in our society. And my hopes for the future is that we can be able to get through this. You know, and I was just telling you, what happened to George Floyd is in the past. Yes, we want those 4 officers charged. Yes, we want them to be convicted and sentenced, but it's in the past. Now we have to focus on what can we do to make this better as a whole. Yeah. Not saying that we're overlooking the things that happen, because those people still need to be held accountable for that. But I can't keep harping on what happened and not trying to get to a solution. Yeah. Yeah. We need to try to get to a solution, and it need to be done ASAP.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take so much away from what you've said, Edward, but there are just 2 things I want to mention now. One is that your hopes for the future are that we go back to the root of the problem to understand it and root it out.
Yes.
And I'm also going to take from our conversation your encouragement that begin, believe, become starts with begin.
Start with begin. We got to start from somewhere.
That's right. Thank you.
And we got to believe we can make that change.
Yes, thank you.
And we become by putting in the work.
Yeah. So we're going to end today with our moment of reflection on a poem that you have written. You're going to read for us. This poem is called Myths and Misconception. And in parentheses, you can choose differently. So
yes.
Go ahead.
Hurt that my black skin is treated like a sin. Anger that we continue to stereotype one another. Sad that murder is our first option and guns give us the courage to take another human life. Twisted and confused, misconception of a black man, deadly force the police use. It's bigger than racial profiling and police brutality. Underfunded, underprivileged, uneducated, it's a mentality. 500 years of deeply rooted spirituality. 100 years of Jim Crow morality. 75 years of miseducation and abuse. Over 30 years of mass incarceration, just to name a few. Since the 19th century, black folks been urbanized. Drugs, violence, and murder left us desensitized. Don't know nothing, didn't see a thing, all for the love of money and fashion is a scheme. It seems we're living the American dream, tailor-made by our own words and actions. I mean, youth, You, we created it.
Mm.
No amount of laws or legislation can bridge the gap. Years of hate and disgrace and a knife in the back. Just the other day, my homeboy's son got shot in the back. Now let's retract. Black lives matter when black lives matter to blacks. I said, black lives matter when black lives matter to blacks. Change starts from within. Crack an egg on the outside, life ends. Crack from the inside, life begins. Commitment is making a sacrifice and we all win. Yet, your perception is your reality. That's all you ever known. Institutionalized, living in a cell of your own. It's hard to do right when the world is constantly treating you wrong. Sabotage your community, that's all you was ever shown. Right is right, wrong is wrong. Let freedom ring. Man, I'm tired of singing that same damn song. My days are short, my nights are long. Just praying to God, my son and my daughter make it home. I wonder, was the gates put up to keep crime out and keep our ass in? I am the greatest, yes, I said it, with the Muhammad Ali grin. Young people, use your brain, just don't follow a fantasy trend. Our ancestors died for integration, a moment of silence. Now let's transcend. Make a man go to school and comprehend, be a better father than your far-fetched friend. Stand for something other than selling dreams and cocaine. Live for something. Black lives matter. Don't live in regretful shame. The media and the police treat you like an animal, so you strike like one. Hate in the eyes of love, so you hold a big gun. Put the gun down. The fight is not in your hood. Police brutality, and you say it's all good? Oh, you rather vandalize your perception with drugs and alcohol. Misguided transgression, the fight is down to City Hall. Ball till you fall, now that's some stinking thinking. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Placing blame is not your contribution, nor your restitution. Please, I'm begging y'all, hands up, don't shoot. Please, I'm begging y'all, I can't breathe. All lives do matter. To the deceased, we salute. Justice for peace is my pursuit.
Thank you so much, Edward, for sharing your time, sharing your story, sharing your artwork with all of us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a genuine pleasure. So all of you out there, thank you so much for being with us too. Please join us on the talk back to continue our conversation with Edward. This has been Radio OPAC. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.